Gone are the days of formal etiquette. So, what should you do in the maddening social situations you face every day? This is No Etiquette, the podcast where we address modern etiquette questions in a nonsense fashion. I'm Vivian Lee, coming to you from Singapore, and joining me on the line is my best friend Sophia Bose in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hi, Sophia.
Hi, Vivian.
We are recording another super speedy episode. Today, not on a listener question, but on a topic that I think is near and dear to our hearts and many others, and that is book custody.
This you must explain, Vivian. What is book custody?
Well, I was going to ask Sophia, what comes to your mind when you hear the term book custody?
I think of divorces and trying to figure out who gets to keep the books.
Very much so. In a way, book custody is when you have shared ownership of a book, maybe through a marriage or maybe just through kind of unclear means, like I'll describe in a second, but, maybe a sibling or maybe a kind of, it belonged to one person, but really it belongs to you because you're the one who really reads it and loves it. And I have to say, there were some times in my youth when I assumed custody of a book in that very way.
My goodness, really?
There were some books, it wasn't good of me, but I felt like I had a book lover's claim to it, where like sometimes a friend would lend me a book and it was a book that meant nothing to them. They had this book, they loaned it to me, and I would just think, I like it more. It should be with me.
High etiquette. You like it more. You've done well for the book. I approve. Sophia approves. Good work.
This is some version of like, not like might makes right, but like wanting it more makes right. It's messed up. And in my defense, I haven't done this in like, since I was like 12 or something, maybe. But
you have to think about it in the framework of love, right? The object is receiving the most love from you. Therefore, the world is a better place if you own that book.
Yeah, my stealing this book from you improves the universe.
Yes, therefore, the universe, the cosmos. You've done very well, Vivian. Even at 12.
I'll examine the morality of that a little more later, but I think I agree secretly a little bit. Like, right, there's some, it's like, Matilda by Roald Dahl?
Yes.
A book which I certainly borrowed from a friend and I think gave back at some point, but classic example. Isn't that the one, maybe I'm not thinking, is that the one where she gets adopted by Miss Honey?
Yes, and when you're done talking about that, I will just I will talk about Matilda for 10 seconds because I thought about it today. So yes,
me too. I don't know why it's been on the brink. We're in sync. But I've always thought about that book, for lots of the many memorable moments, like the eating of the cake and so on. But at the end, doesn't she just get adopted by Miss Honey because Miss Honey wants her and her parents don't? That's the very basic transaction, and it restores. It restores the rightness of the world. Yes,
it does.
That's the basic message of Matilda. Is she the one with like the magic finger too? Like the other stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, she gazes. I mean, I think her gaze can sort of move things, right? Like she can look at something and she can make a move.
Maybe
That's
she has
what
a few
Matilda's
powers.
Power is. She has. I think the power I remember is that she can levitate things by her gaze. Like she can lift that chalk. She can make the chalk right on the board. She can lift things essentially.
Sure, and the point is that is inconsequential. What matters is that she goes to the one who loves her more, and that makes things right in the world.
Exactly.
Tell me your Matilda thoughts.
Okay, very briefly. So, I was thinking today, and I do not know why. I really think this is one of our split screen life things. Like maybe you were thinking about that time. I was getting off of the bus. Yeah. I had no reason to be thinking about Matilda. This is the thing. No reason. But I was. So what I was thinking is this. Is actually Miss Honey an older version of Matilda? So, like in a sort of psychological sense. So yes, I know they're supposed to be mirrors to each other. Like they have, Trunchbull is supposed to be like Matilda's parents, but I can imagine a young child sort of trying to do therapy on themselves, being like, you know what, when I'm older, like this is what I will be like. Like, yes, I may have a Trunchbull in my life, but like I will like somehow save the day. like there's so much that's similar about the two of them, and the way that they adopt each other, like they adopt each other at the end, right? And so it's like
They do. They adopt each other. That's true.
it's not so much that it's never resolved, right? Like the ending is very realistic. It's never that yes, whoever it is that's not accepting you is going to accept you. What ends up happening is she accepts herself, like she finds the thing that accepts her. So anyway, that was my thought, and then I was like, am I reducing the complexity by saying that? Because maybe it's better to have somebody who's anyway. Sorry, it was just supposed to be 10 seconds, but that was my thought. It was like on the way back to my place, getting off the bus. I do not know why.
No, that's great. There's two possibilities, and maybe what's great about Miss Honey is that you can read her either way. That she is sort of like the unlikely heroine, right? And also some version of Matilda herself.
Yeah.
I think both are right. It made me think of, like, I didn't read all the Paper Girls graphic novels by Brian K. Vaughan, but one moment I really loved is when I think the younger version of the main character time travels to the older version, and older version thinks that she's kind of a loser. Like that older version thinks she's like, I think like not married, like has this tiny dinky car that all the girls cram into in a kind of funny panel. And younger version thinks she's so cool. She's like, you have a car. We can go anywhere we want. Like your life is amazing. And there's a very sweet moment when older her gives younger her a big hug. And I do think there's some... I think of Miss Honey, I can't really remember. I mean, it's weird the things you remember about a book that you read as a child. I remember Miss Honey kind of being portrayed as this, like, pathetic figure, and I identified strongly with her in my teaching days of this, like, I just remember she would use the phrase, like, I always have a jolly good tuck-in at the school lunch to explain that she doesn't eat dinner because she has no money.
Yes. No, she has, like, I think she has, like, tea and some, like, I don't know, toast in her house or, like, butter. She has, like, a very, like, modest, but yes, she tucks in.
Yeah, to make up for her frugal repast, which I think you would see as real food and I would not see as real. Like, I think you can see kind of like a romantic charm to eating a little nibble of toast.
Like a nibble of toast. That'd be great, yes.
Yeah, but I was like, this woman doesn't have, like, her teaching job is not paying her enough to give her food. And now she's to adopt this child. But I do think you can see child Matilda. Like, I think if the right way to see Miss Honey is through child Matilda's eyes. Of like, you are just who I would like to be, / you are just the person I would like to adopt me, to bring me up. You, whom the world sees as kind of sad and waifish and mousy or unable to stand up for herself, kind of, right? Those are sort of the Miss Honey traits.
Yeah. It's so funny what we remember, right? Because, like, no, you're right. Essentially, she is kind of powerless to Trunchbull, but at the same time, I think Matilda saw her as this, like, brilliant woman who, like, understood things, and she was a grown-up that understood, which was not an experience Matilda had.
You're right. No, the grown-up who understands is on the side of the children is the ultimate Roald Dahl hero, rightly so.
Yes.
And you're right, to retain that into adulthood, right? Because there's so much of kids versus adults, and it's like once you become an adult, you forget and you don't know anymore, and you can't understand what a child goes through. And the rare adult who retains that and has a sort of sense of humor and is nice to the children is just the ultimate person.
Like that. That's what to aspire to, right? Like
that's what you want to grow up to be.
Yeah.
Oh, well, great snap discussion of Matilda. Book neither of us has read in a long time. But it's nice to know it's one of those that just imprints on you. So that's Matilda. But speaking of book custody, thinking of some other books. So the reason the book custody etiquette thing came up for me recently was I was kind of a long walk, but I was excited to see that there was a new memoir by Sherry Turkle, who is this... most of her work has been on observing the effects of technology use on children and young people. So I think she's she's like a sociologist, clinical psychologist by training. She's just had a lot of training.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't even know, like her books are sometimes under sociology, but that's really not all that they are.
Okay.
And she's speaking to a generalist audience, not as an
Yeah.
academic. But
Yeah.
my history, I guess you could say, with Sherry Turkle is when I was in college, she came to my college to give a talk on her book that had just come out at the time, which was Alone Together. Great title. Fantastic. Yes. She was, I want to say, this was in like maybe 2010 or something. One of the, I think, first people to be writing about the effects of technology use in a kind of, I mean, surely, not one of the first, but hers was the best book, I thought, that I had heard and read. She's, she's not being sensationalist. She does a lot of studies. She's not even, she's not anti-technology. She's just saying, let's be really aware and thoughtful about what technology drives us to do and what kind of lives we want to live broadly. And so I had no idea about any of this. And so she came to give a talk. Her talk was so wonderful. She read from the book. I can't remember except that it was one of those talks where you just go, I must buy this book and read the rest of this book. This person is great.
Yeah.
And I happened to be sitting next to this friend of a friend whom I really didn't know very well. They were good. It was one of those, he's a close friend of your distant friends, but you yourselves have no close connection. His name was Brandon. And we looked at each other and we were like, we must own and read this book. And it was a little expensive because we were just in college. It was a hardcover. It was maybe, and it gets a little marked up when they sell it at the reading. It was maybe 30 or 40 US or something, which is,
I would say, even to this day, as a working woman in her 30s, I would think a second.
I would think a second before dropping that for a book, even when you love the book.
I would think a second.
So, you know what it was? It was 40 because Brandon and I looked at each other and went, let's buy this together. Let's put in 20 each.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness, Vivian. Yes. 40 is, this is the point in which one does that.
I know. It was like a book made to be co-purchased. Who just lays down $40?
Together.
Oh, we had to together the Alone Together?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure that was on, because she spoke so glowingly of like why true social connection. She doesn't even use the word connection. Like connection to her is just like you have a Facebook connection, but like true engagement and like, like relationship is what she's so after. And anyway, so I can imagine that we just like pulled out a 20 each, man. Like it was, this makes it sound like it was so long ago, but we decided to co-buy the book and we don't really have an agreement other than that we're going to both put in money and each read the book.
Okay.
And we buy the book and we go up to get it signed and Sherry Turkle looks at us and clearly thinks we're a couple. Because she says something like, she looks at us so warmly and says things like, not like, how did you guys meet? Because we were in college together, obviously, but like something along the lines of, she was speaking to two of us together. Like, I'm so glad you enjoyed the talk, like addressing us as a unit. And after she signed the book to both of us, she said like, good luck, like really warmly.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just so funny because, there was no way that we were together and to this day, me and Brandon. But I remember reading the book and finding it fantastic and then passing it to Brandon. And now I don't know what has happened. And now that I am reading her next book, I think is called Reclaiming Conversation, and I'm getting ready to read the memoir, it's making me kind of want to revisit Alone Together. And I wonder if I still have joint custody of this book, if it's still in the world.
The answer is simple. You paid $20. He paid $20. You have shared custody to this day.
Sure. In every, this is not even like, way. This is cut and dried.
Cut and dry. There is no moral gray area here. The both of you own it still.
Yeah.
In fact, how many years did Brandon... Sorry, what?
Oh, yeah, go on.
No, what were you saying?
I mean, but for the fact that we were kind of vague about, like, I honestly think when I gave it back to him, passed it to
Uh-huh.
him, I had no expectation of seeing it again ever. It was one of
Really?
them, right? Like, because, we weren't very close. Like, books are so, okay, I have learned to hold books a little loosely in that so many people do not return books. And I'm saying this as one of them, as I confessed earlier in
Mm.
this episode. So many books you lend to
Yeah.
people do not come back. Worse than any other kind of property, books do not come back to you. And so I've learned that if I really want, okay, first, if I really care about a book, I just shouldn't lend it to people. If it's like a
Mm.
beloved favorite
Yeah.
copy, I don't lend it anymore. I'll say,
Mhm.
get it from a
Mhm.
library, or,
Yeah.
I'll lend my second copy if I have one or something. Like,
Yeah.
if I really cannot bear to part with this book, I do not part with
Yeah.
it, period. And
Yeah. Yeah.
then, following that, if it is a book I want to lend, but I want to get back, I'm very clear about it. I say it very clearly to the person. I put a post-it note with my name and my email
Um,
address. Like, I'm
yeah.
like very clearly like, this is not the
Yeah.
kind of loan that doesn't come back. This is the kind of
Yeah.
loan
This
that
is
returns to me. Do you
uh-huh.
understand? And I think I'll even like write it down or something. Like, I'll really make sure I get it back. And then
Mhm.
beyond that, I'm like, if I never see this book again, so be it. I
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
believe that books have a destiny, and that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Well, I don't know if it's beautiful. It's a little resigned, or
The destiny
something, or
thing
it's,
is
you
there.
know, books have a destiny. But
Yeah.
I think so when I handed this back to Brandon, and
Mhm. Mhm.
wanting him to enjoy the book, and you know how it is in
Yeah.
college. Well, like for us,
Yeah.
like we had to move in and out of the dorms every year. We both had to leave and go back to our home countries at some point. Like
Yeah.
it was such
Yeah.
a like, there's almost certainly no way that this book is
Yeah.
returning to you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I didn't make it clear or anything that I'd read it and I was done with it. I treasured it. I enjoyed it, but it was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, if it goes to him and I don't see it again. But now,
Uh-huh.
how many years later? Easily 20, more than 20. Is that
Wow. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
No,
Must
wait, no.
if it was in
No, 10, 10. Oh gosh. Oh
2010.
gosh. Yeah, sorry. More than 10,
Yeah.
which is still many
It's
years for a
14.
book.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. How many years?
Um, More than 10, because I can't remember the exact year the signing
Okay,
occurred.
got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more than 10. And I haven't spoken to Brandon practically since then. Nothing against
Okay.
him, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just so little
Yeah.
contact.
Yeah.
What do you think is the etiquette of trying to regain my book custody?
Um, I love that you're asking me this question, Vivian, simply because I actually love just this whole situation. I also really love what you said about books having a destiny. Yeah, most things do, but I mean, everything does, I think. But like, I really love what you said about books being one of the things that people don't return.
Hmm.
And I wonder if there is something about, like, there is an intimacy to reading a book that once you've read it, it's hard, especially if it's a book you care about. Even if you borrowed it, it's hard to return it. And other
Mm.
objects are not like that.
Mm.
Like, you can borrow a pen and you'd return the pen. But, like, a book has, like, emotions tied to it. It made you feel things. And returning it is like you're returning those feelings that it gave you or something. I don't know. Like, you just feel those things. But in any case, etiquette. Brendan, I think it is high etiquette to actually reach out and say, it's been 10 plus years. How are you? By the way, remember that book? She came out with a new book. I'm rereading her old books. Do you still have the copy of the old book that we bought together? I'd love to read it if you do. I think that's how I would put it.
Yeah. And as you're saying that is a perfectly reasonable request, phrased, with aplomb.
Uh-huh.
I do, and maybe this is not for one to worry about, but like, will it make someone feel a little weird and guilty or something? Especially if it was, almost a possession one never expected to have to hand back, right? Like, I don't think I was very definitive at the time about it. Like, if somebody did that to me, not in a bad way, but I would just be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I donated that book 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like it's well on its way.
Wow. But Vivian, there is something about the way the two of you bought that book together. This is a very special circumstance. Somehow, I do think you can get away with asking this without making Brandon feel bad. I do think you can do that. Okay, here's
oh yeah, go.
I was just gonna say, I read a study that was saying how people actually really appreciate being contacted, which is a very basic thing, you would imagine. But people like when you reach out to an old friend. Like old friends like when you're reached out to. I think in a sort of general sense, it's a positive thing when you reach out to an old friend you have not spoken with, or like an old acquaintance. That is a net positive thing sociologically, which
Sherry Turkle would love.
Right? Wouldn't she love this? It's just what she's talking about. So I think in that sense, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And, I think if one thinks of it in kind of like the universal society of book lovers way, I think it's like, I'd be a little charmed. Like, oh, you still remember that book? Remember when we bought that together? Like it was good, Yeah. Even if I had to, I think even if I'm putting myself in his shoes, even if I had said, I'm so sorry, this book has gone on its merry way. I feel like he's the kind of person who might feel guilty and then try to buy me another copy. And I'm not manipulating him to get a free copy back out of this or something. But there's something about when you've had an experience with a book, you want to treasure and keep it. And sometimes you want to pass it on. Sometimes you want to keep it for yourself. Sometimes you want it to keep going to someone else.
Well, another question. Does Brandon live near you?
I don't know where in the world Brandon is.
Oh, this complicates things. Imagine
it could be anywhere.
Ship this thing in it. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah. I don't know. He could be one of those people. I've known a few people who will never part with a book, and have moved to their books, shore to shore, U-Haul to U-Haul, plane to plane. And that kind of person would delight in nothing more than, airmailing you this book that you have passed between each other for many years. Like, I think that there's like a romance. I'm not saying this is going to ignite anything between me and Brandon. Like, last person, sweet guy, but nothing. Just to remain connected through a physical book is a lovely, charming story.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I think you've already answered this question, which is that you must reach out to Brandon. It's just a lovely thing for all the reasons above.
Yeah, I'll reach out. We'll see what happens. I'll have a story to tell. But on the larger topic of book custody, is there anything else here besides, I don't know. Have you navigated a fractious case of book custody?
So I really liked how we started out this podcast where you described taking a book from a friend that you felt you loved more. I think it's rare for two people to have the same degree of feeling for a book. Like usually it's so I'm going through a divorce right now, and actually dividing the books was very simple because it's just so clear which books have value to a person, and other person might value it, but and so somehow that was the easiest of all the things, to just be like, oh yeah, I know that's the book. I think that's somehow easy. It follows the principle of whoever loves it more gets it.
Okay. And in the case where it's clear cut, it's easy.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of I think if it were the case that two people equally had claims of love on a book, that it would potentially be, but it would have to be then I think I can think of some very beloved books I borrowed from friends, and they're dear to me because I borrowed them from a friend. But then it was also but I must give it back to this friend whose beloved book this is. But in the event that somehow you buy a book together with somebody and you both really want that particular copy, that could be hard. There's only one
particular copy. Yeah, there's only one.
That particular copy. I do think, it's, now that I buy so many of my books digital, the few paper copies I have, I really treasure. And I can think of specific books. I'm thinking now, especially of these. Did you ever read any books by Tamora Pierce?
No.
Ooh,
I have not.
Tamora Pierce was a YA author before there were YA books.
Wow.
She was early to it. And they were very, I borrowed them all from a friend, Samantha, who had all of them. So this is also a gem, right? When you have a friend who has all the books.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were just so enthralling to me. And I felt like extra special that I had borrowed her copies that had been loaned to some other people.
Mm.
And I think like all these years later, like I've always felt like rereading them and not quite done it because I think it doesn't recapture that
Yeah,
feeling of having her
yeah.
copy that I
Her
read like late at night in the
Oh,
bathroom,
oh,
like
oh, oh. Maybe we
um
should revisit this topip at some point. I think
yeah, there's more to say.
there's more to say. This has gotten a little bit more complex than I anticipated.
Yeah, you were so ready to be like easy, you know. You both paid $20 for it, you know? Yeah, we're lucky that that was an easy case. I will certainly reach out to Brandon and see what comes of this. I'm kind of curious now. This is a
Yeah,
tale,
we
the
must
start of a
know.
tale.
We must know. This is a
Oh,
tale.
we must know. We must know. But you know, you're right. I think what we're arriving at is if there's something about the experience of that book and of that
Mhm,
copy
mhm,
that is precious beyond the sum of money that it
mhm,
represented or the way it was purchased.
mhm.
Who has a greater claim on it? Is it the person who loves it more? What would Matilda do?
I think she would just keep it if she loved it more.
I think that's right. I think that's right. She would just keep it.
She'd
And
just
if
keep
she
it.
needed to, she would tell some like little devious lies or like
Yes,
make up an
absolutely.
elaborate ruse.
Absolutely.
And the sympathetic adults would help. And it would work out so that she, who loved it more, would keep the book and all would be right with
Yes.
the world.
That is how I think she would behave.
Yeah. And you know, Sam, you know, Sophia, you know, we who live by the sword shall die by the sword. Like, we must accept this if it happens to us. If we are ever
You're right.
contending for a beloved book and it
Oh, that's
becomes
so
apparent
funny.
that the other person loves it more, then we
Mm.
must relinquish it
High
with like
etiquette. That is
honor and pride and
okay.
justice.
I really appreciate that you've said this, Vivian. You're right.
All right.
This goes two ways. All right.
This goes two ways. We must
Okay.
accept
Okay.
it if it is done to us, and we
All
will
right.
say that is the etiquette.
Okay. That is the etiquette. That is the law. Okay.
That is the law. Listeners, you heard it from us first. That is the law. Do you have questions on this topic? Surely you have your own book custody disputes that require arbitration, and we are here to help. Send us your questions at noetiquettepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time here on No Etiquette. And until then, it is good etiquette to dream up the older version of yourself who will treasure you as you are now and adopt you into growing into the person you want to be with great slyness and understanding of your situation.
Goodbye.